ready.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay, guys. I'm now going to show you how to tap a wedding band, make a wedding band round, and then I'm going to hopefully show you, if I've got enough time, how to file it. So we roll this metal, you can see it's white. Okay, we got it white by putting it in 10% sulfuric acid. You can see it's cracked a little bit there, which is not good, but I will definitely be able to solve that. Probably only going to use about that much anyway. Okay, so we start off by, after rolling, tapping metal without changing the shape of it. Nice and flat. And a lot of you have been taught to use a mallet. Okay, the mallet is the biggest waste of time ever. Yes, it won't mark your metal, but you will probably spend about 15 minutes trying to do what takes me a minute. And you can see, if you look very, very closely to this, you will see that I haven't marked or dented it. So the important thing is how to hammer. While I'm doing this, I'm going to show you guys how to hammer. So I'm going to start now, first of all, on how to, where to start, okay? Tabitha, do you have a saw blade for me? I don't have to. Okay, so we start off by cutting the end off and getting a nice straight edge. Now, if you look at other lessons that people, and if you went to tech, they probably told you to measure the length and then add pi plus the thickness of metal or whatever the case may be to get the length, to get your finger size. That is a way, okay, but it, for me, doesn't always work out. And if you're using a hammer, it tends to change. So I'm going to show you my way. You can do it that way if you like, okay, but I do it a different way. Okay, so anything I show you to do, you can do your way, but be careful of time. You'll see how fast it is to make a wedding band. So if you're doing it with mallets, or if you're measuring and it's taking you longer and you're having to resize your rings, consider trying this. Now, I know it's harder, but you'll probably find a time period. I need a rough file. In a time period, once you're good at it, it will definitely save you time. All right, so there already I've wasted time by cutting the thing, and it wasn't perfectly straight. So to start off with, I'm going to do this again. If you have a look, that's pretty straight, right? And there's go. But to start off with, when you're starting, take the extra time and mark it. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few tips with jewelry. First thing, you start off straight, you'll end up straight. Okay, any skewness that you do in the beginning will need to be corrected at a later stage or several times. Okay, so sometimes it's easier if you start off skew to go back and melt down and thing right in the beginning, rather than to go all the way to the end. Like for example, where this is cracked, it's probably better to re-roll it if I need more length, if I go past that, because you'll probably find that that will show at the end. Okay, so rather take your time at doing that, at remelting. So now, if you mark it and you cut with your saw blade, nice and slowly. Now you probably think, oh, that was a waste of time going to draw that with a square and all of that. But if you take your time cutting it as well, you'll probably find, can you zoom in there and see that you can still see the line? You still see the line there? No, you can't, but you mustn't cut the line away. You must cut next. Oh, you can. So you must cut next, and you can see it's perfectly straight. So if I put that here and I hold it up to the light, you can you see underneath there? There's no light going through, so that's perfectly square. Okay. So once you're good, already now I've saved some time with the file. All I have to do now is just touch it like that, and that thing is ready for solder. Okay. Right, next thing you're going to do is we're going to stamp it. Okay, so now South Africa has a voluntary hallmarking system. So hallmarking means you're going to say what metal it is. Okay, in the UK it's compulsory. You won't be stamping in Europe and the UK. You have to send it off for testing after you finished your piece, so they can make sure it is sterling silver. Little tip, if you stamp it 4 millimeters approximately from the solder joint, and somebody brings back a piece that you made, you will then know where the solder joint is. Okay, now note, my stamp is not at a 30-degree angle, it's in the middle and it's dead straight. If you're struggling to get that right, just open your dividers and just very lightly mark 2 lines, and you can now see when you're stamping, you can make it nice and straight. So that again also might seem like a waste of time, but it really does. If your stamp is skew, it really doesn't look like quality work. Okay, so even a small thing like a stamp being skew can show a difference between quality work and bad work. Okay, so now we're going to take our half round pliers. So this is half round on this side and flat on that side. Okay, the stamp being on the other side, and I'm not cutting the length, I am just bending. Now in silver, even in 9 carat, you should be able to make your wedding band nice and round. And you can, if you have a look on the inside, there's no indentations, no marks, because I'm using a half round. If you're using a flat because you're lazy and you can't find your half round, you're just going to make more work for yourself, and it's going to end up not being the right thickness. Okay, so now if you notice, I make it round and I go over the top of it, so it's nice and round. Okay, but not perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to take my sizing stick. Now the other thing about sizing sticks is you get these mandrels with their sizes on them. Those are only a guideline. You must make sure that your sizing stick matches your sizing rings, and that you use the same ones throughout every workshop that you own, because somebody tries yours. The sizing rings are made by different companies. So if you're using a sizing stick from a different company that you bought the sizing rings from, you can end up being a half a size out. So you must either know the difference, or you must just buy the same company from the same, not the same supplier, the same manufacturer of this, the sizing sticks. Okay, so now we need to get to size O. So you can see I bent it around, it's almost a S, right? Okay, so now it's quite easy for me to bring it down. Okay, so that's O1/2. I'm now going to, just for your purposes, I'm going to make it nice and square. Okay, important thing to note. If you cut this at an angle, you will be able to put it together and solder it. But what happens is, if it's like this, and the one side is like this, and then you bend it like that and you solder it, this ring on this side of the ring is thinner, is smaller than on that side of the ring. Okay, Tabo? So that's why 90 degrees together, then both sides are exactly the same. So that is super important. And when you're cutting your second one, you must be more slower and more accurate, so that you don't overfile it and then your wedding band is too small. Okay. And if you notice here again, if you can zoom in on that, you will see that I'm cutting this nice and slowly, and I'm making sure that it's the same, and so I don't have to mess around with a file. Can you see that? Because now if I've got to mess, I've got to open it up and I've got to file and correct. It's not like that. So very important to use your square here, so that you don't have to correct with a file. Okay. Now we're going to take our half rounds again, and we're going to just straighten everything out. Okay. And now we're going to check our size again. Okay. And I'm still too big. Okay, which is quite nice. All right. But you can see it's not perfectly round. So from this you can see how much hammering, and you'll get used to this, of how much less to take off. Okay, so I'm going to just take a little bit more off. I'm going to do this twice or 3 times, because I really don't want to make a mistake on my video. And what you don't want to be doing is tapping the thing up too many sizes, because it's going to make your ring thinner. But to be honest with you, if you go up a whole 2 sizes, you shouldn't lose more than 0.2 or 0.3 millimeter thickness if you hammer the way I show you how to hammer. Okay, now I'm going to do this way, because if you're working in 9 carat, this is not going to help you. Okay, it's too hard. Okay, 18 carat sometimes as well. You need a ring bending pliers. Probably have never used this when you were a tech. They don't tend to what's it, but this thing is very important. It does bend, mark the inside of your ring. So please make sure it's annealed. Okay, and just do little movements here to close the ring, and then turn it a bit and close the ring again. Okay, so if you look inside, there's tiny little marks there, but they're easily to be recovered. Okay, don't squeeze hard, you will make marks on the inside. Some people go and put masking tape in here. I think it's a waste of time. Okay, let's check my size again. Okay, and we are half a size down. I think I'm going to take a little bit more off, so I'll rather hammer it a bit more. Important thing, the scribe must be very sharp. Okay, and you must put it at an angle. Don't put it like this, because obviously it's away. Put it right up against the thing like that. So that thing needs to be sharpened. It's flat, it's blunt. So. No worry, I'll do a lesson on how to sharpen your dividers and your scribe, okay? So that's also very important. If your scribe and your dividers is not sharp, you can see how sharp this one is. If you put your finger on there, and I sharpen this, can you feel that? Now when you're marking, it's a nice thin straight line. Okay, now I'm noticing, now this is also good. See, it's flat there, and it's round there, so I'd rather bend it there where it's flat so that it can get, I'm trying to get the shape as nice as I can. Okay, now it's higher on this side, lower on that side, so I can bring it down like this. And also, can you see that it's off center? So if you turn your like that, you see how I straightened it out there? You see that? Okay, so now most of you would say, oh, that's like I'm going to solder now. Okay, bad idea. All right, you have a gap here, okay, of about 0.01 of a millimeter, 0.1 of a millimeter. That means you're going to see your solder line. You don't want to see your solder line. It must be clean, clean, clean. So you're going to now take your saw blade. With your fingers, you're going to hold this thing. See, it's off center. I just want to make sure it's perfectly straight. Okay. Now don't go make it very tight here, because your blade will break. Okay. You wedge it into your peg so it doesn't close, because there is a bit of a spring now. Okay. So you wedge it so it doesn't close, and on that join, you cut through that join now. Okay. When you close it, nice and tight, and you check that the gap is now nice and clean. That is good enough. So now I'm just making sure it's, now notice I'm wearing my optivisors for a silly little solder joint like this. And that is because we don't want to be fixing anything. If this thing is slightly off by 0.1, it means it'll be 0.1, it'll be 0.2 thinner, because you've got to do 0.1 on the bottom, 0.1 on the top to get it flush, and then you're out. So this must be 100% flush on both sides. You notice that it is perfectly parallel, perpendicular. Okay, it's not round though. Okay, so we're making sure that this, so I notice on this side, you see this side is flush, but this side is slightly higher. So what I do is, I just take it and just do the one side like that. See there? And then it flushes out. Okay, so now this is perfect now. All right. Now we're going to take our solder block, and we're going to, we can do it that way, or we can do it, tweezers please, and some flux and some solder. So if any of you are watching this video, ask Tabu to, this is Tabu's bench, to sort his bench out and then put everything, so I don't have to ask for tools. So he's obviously, I've got his tweezer. So we're not going to rip Tabu off, but he tries. Okay, so solder, not marked guys, it's not marked. It's hard, it needs to be marked. Okay, so you get solders hard, easy, medium. Now what it means is hard is a higher melting point than easy. Whenever you're soldering your bands together, okay, so you get 90-degree solder joints, perpendicular, what do you call this? Parallel solder joints, perpendicular solder joints. Okay, parallel solder joint must be done in hard solder. You will see it if you use medium and easy solder. Okay, so if you're doing and you're out of hard solder, don't go solder with a medium. When you polish, you will see your line. Okay, the hard solders on parallel joints. It doesn't matter what you're doing, always do your parallel joints first. 90 degrees joints, you've got a line there, it doesn't matter. Okay, so obviously you use hard solder as often as you can, then medium solder, and your last thing should be easy solder. You shouldn't really use easy solder unless it's for like things like catches, because that solder is not strong at all. I see my torch is leaking. Any parallel pliers, please? Behind you on the thing there. Where's the parallels? Okay, so what I mean by parallel pliers, these pliers, when you open them, they're always parallel. Okay? Whereas these pliers, yeah, they're not parallel. See there? So they're made to go parallel. Okay? So it's nice for when you're using it for spanners and stuff. But you can use this on your jewelry when you need to, for example, if you need to hold this, it's now parallel. So now when you're turning and twisting, you get a nice turn and twist. Okay, so now we're gonna, oopsie. The new torches, so it's still a bit tight. And this nozzle is a bit small. So you get different size nozzles. This is more nozzle for making wire. You should have different nozzles for different jobs, but I mean you can still use this. But now when I'm talking, I'm blowing it out. Have you got a bigger nozzle than your torch? Put that behind. It's rather use that one. No, let me use that torch. You must fix this, huh? Okay, now we're going to select some solder. Don't use your pliers to cut your solder. Use these things and you roll your solder thin in the roller. So this one is too thick. You've got to go even thinner than this. As thin as you can, so you can use, when it's thin, you will be able to use the amount of solder that you need. So on a solder joint like that, that's probably a little too little, but we will see. We will do 2 solder joints because you don't want too much solder. Now I've noticed with all you guys, all you interns that are with me, you tend to use too much solder, okay? So and anything that you put extra has to be filed off. So we go back to that. If you start off straight, you end up straight. Can I have your spike, please? Okay, now he's using a file, old file, as a spike. But this file is finished, so please don't use your normal needle files. This thing is so blunt, it's about 20 years old. So instead of throwing it away, we've converted it to a spike. Please do not use your needle files as soldering tools. Once you heat it up, it loses all its hardness. It anneals it, which we spoke about before, and it becomes soft. So files are hard. Okay, now important thing with soldering: you never melt your solder to join. Okay, so you've got to bring the temperature of the ring to the melting point of the solder, and then it'll solder. If you heat the solder up on the piece and it's melting, it's not doing anything. It won't attach to the ring until the ring is the same temperature. So if you just put your flame here at the join, okay, and you put this here, you'll probably find, you see that it melted. It's not going to attach to that because it's not the whole ring is not warmed up. So what you do is you warm up your entire ring to just before the correct melting point of the solder. Now you're going to say, how do I know that? Look at my flux. My flux is starting to run, so now the temperature is getting close. Okay, so I'm going to pick this one up without that one getting damaged, and I'm going to just pop it on the join. Okay. Alright, and I'm heating up my whole ring. Now I'm purposely not going to heat up the solder joint. So, okay, and I also notice my solder's on the left side of the joint. And you want it to be on the joint. Okay, so now I'm going to heat up the whole ring. And watch how that solder just drops all of a sudden. Okay, see that? Now it missed it. So just it'll attach to the meniscus. And can you see there? I pulled the solder off here as well. But can you see how it just ran into that joint? And you're not sitting there concentrating in the one spot. Okay. This is silver. Silver conducts heat fast, so it travels fast. So if you don't heat up the whole thing, it's going to. It's a whole different process when you've got stones in the ring and you need to put it in water. We'll run through that later. Okay, this is a crappy solder joint. You can see the solders run everywhere. It should just be on the joint. So I've got to clean that up, which is not good for me. I'm not happy about that. Okay. So now I'm going to quench this, and I'm going to go now. You can use your dry acid, which we don't have. We've run out. So I'm just going to put this in 10% sulfuric acid because you want no flux on there. Okay, so this is just a lesson on soldering, and then we'll do the next one where we start hammering. Okay, so you can push stop.